February Finance and General Purposes Committee. John, would you like to read out the GDPR, please?
I certainly will, Chair. Okay, please note that the Council is, and members of the public and individual councillors could be, making audio or video recordings of this meeting. The Council's recordings will be uploaded to a cloud-based website of record and will be available indefinitely to the general public. By participating at the meeting, including by merely logging into it, you consent to this. If you do not consent to these terms, you should please not log into the meeting.
Thank you, John. Right, item 1, apologies. Do we have any apologies, John?
We do. Apologies received from Councillor Trundle.
Right.
Joanna, I was just going to say maybe a little bit delayed, but has arrived just in the nick of time. Was in another meeting representing the council. Lucky you, Joanna. And Councillor Northam is a little bit tied up at work, so he's hoping to join, but it's going to be a little bit later on.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Item 2, any declarations of interest? No?
No, thanks, Chair.
Okay. All right. Number 3, any questions from the floor? Russell.
That was pretty quick. I don't actually have a question, but I do have a few words to say on item 6.3. So if you're mindful, would it be okay if I do it at that time rather than do it now, so it becomes a bit disconnected?
Yes. No, I think that's a very good idea. So we'll bring you in at that point. And
also, do you mind, and I don't want it to sound offensive or disrespectful, if I don't have my camera on running all the way through like you normally have.
Okay.
No, so I've got some things to get on with. So
all right, if you could switch it off until your time, that'd be great.
Chair, could I just suggest that maybe we bring that forward so that Russell doesn't have to wait all that time? Just a thought.
Well, I think Russell's quite happy to do that, aren't you, Russell?
Yeah, I'm reasonably relaxed. I mean, I wouldn't say no to the offer that Paul's put forward, but no, I'm relatively relaxed.
Well, okay, if nobody's got any objections, we can bring that forward then. We'll just do the minutes of the last meeting, Russell, and then we'll come back to yours. So item 4, the minutes of the meeting. Okay, right. We agree the draft minutes of the meeting held on the 12th of January 2021 as a true and fair record. Can I propose that? Do I have a seconder, please? All those in favour? Thank you very much. Right, in that case, we'll bring
That was a hand, sorry, Chair. That was a hand, wasn't it, Rodney?
Are you waving, Rodney? Are you?
No, I was just I'm trying to find out where my arm is or my hand.
Oh, okay. Well, it's on the end of your.
Oh no, yeah. Oh yeah,
coming off your body, so you should be all right.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
You're the same as we are.
I asked for that one.
Okay, so in that case, we'll bring forward then item, if everybody's agreeable, 6.3 to discuss and agree request for grant application for the Steyning and District Partnership. Russell, over to you then.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to say a few bits. I won't labour too much. Just a quick overview. I'm here tonight as the Chair for Visitors and Tourism Committee, and obviously representing the Steyning District Community Partnership with regards to this initiative. There is a briefing paper with regards to this item with obviously a bit more detail than I'm probably going to run through pretty quickly, but I just wanted to give a bit of an overview just in case there was anybody that didn't get a chance to read it. As you'll note, we're seeking a contribution from the Parish Council of £250 to assist with the first phase of our awareness campaign to promote Visit Steyning. Simply, the idea is to promote Steyning as a tourist destination to people outside the immediate area and to encourage more visitors to the town and its surroundings once we're permitted to do so. The initial outreach initiative is in the form of a flyer that will feature attention-grabbing photos and our key assets and notations highlighting areas of USP, such as local shops, food and drink outlets, accommodation providers, and visitors' attractions. The flyer will be distributed with covering letters to coach companies, tourist information centres, and also be available locally for residents. Jill Munsey, Alison Durkin, and Michael Bishop-Powell the key members of the working party, and they've worked really hard on this project, moving it forward very quickly. And we're hopeful the parish council will assist us with part funding of this first phase whilst we seek to help Steyning recover from the pandemic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Russell. Right, anybody got any comments, please? No?
Oh,
Paul?
Well, just to say that I've read the briefing paper and I'm very supportive of it. I think it's absolutely the right thing to do.
Thank you very much. Rodney?
yeah, I was going to say, yeah. Russell, you said this was the first stage.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's good because, you know, there are, you know, I think 2 and 3 stages. You know, maybe, now I don't know whether to say this, but I was watching TV the other evening and on gardens in America, and they went to Pennsylvania and they mentioned William Penn. Well, of course, you know, the Quaker, you know, originated from Penn's Cottage in Steyning. Something that maybe you should be looking at to advertise abroad, you know, get all the overseas tourists in. But that could be stage 4 or 5.
Thank you for that, Rodney, and little brief history lesson. I'd like to know where Penn's Cottage is, actually. Paul?
Well, can I say how annoyed I am with Rodney, because it was me who sent him to the television
Yeah,
programme, and I'd like to volunteer to twin with Pennsylvania, and we'll go out there and see if we can get lots of American tourists back here. So.
Sounds like fun. Russell, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, I was just to really confirm to everybody, the V&T committee are going to be looking at quite a lot of projects this year, obviously around this particular item. So this is just something we really wanted to get moving quite quickly because of Jill and Eddie as well. They have very good connections with local coach companies, and it's one of the avenues we really want to explore and try and move that forward quite quickly, especially as obviously Fletcher's Croft has the ability for us to have those coaches here all the time. So really we just want to maximise that. But just to answer Rodney's point, it is a first phase. We've got a couple of other bits that we're looking at for outreach programmes. I promise we won't be coming back to you for every single one of them, but if there is money available, then I will do.
Okay, all right, Russell, thanks so much. Chris?
Yes, just wanted to ask, are you thinking of targeting walkers, holidays that promote walking? Because we do, when I used to do museum duties, there were lots of people come into the museum that were part of walking tours. And yeah, so I just thought, will you be targeting those as well?
Yeah. Yeah, sorry, through you, Chair. Our committee are amazingly, everybody is a walker. So when we started putting our action plan together for 2021, yeah, pretty much every initiative we came up with initially was about promoting walking. We've got a few soft touch initiatives at the moment with CPRE as well, looking at access for all, and obviously trying to promote the National Park and the Ada Valley for both of those. So we have got some bits. I'm not going to pretend that they're as far advanced as this, because as I say, the 3 people I mentioned have worked really hard, really quickly. We only had our first meeting about a week and a half ago, so they've obviously put a lot of work into this, but the other ones will come through. And if you wanted to come along, Chris, to one of our V&T meetings, you're more than welcome to do so and see what we're talking about and what we've got going. And if you've got some ideas, you're welcome to put them in the pot.
Okay, thanks, Russell.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay. Simon?
I think the initiative is fantastic. I think rather than sort of discuss it about a point that it seems that we're all agreeing, I think I'd like to propose that we go forward and put the £250 towards this.
I'll just thank you for that. Deborah, you're muted.
Right. Okay. Oh, thank you.
Okay.
Could I just ask that Russell includes me in that email? Sorry, that Zoom meeting.
Absolutely.
Russell, please send me the details. That would be great. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Okay. Well, fine. Well, I think that I'm getting the gist of the consensus on this. So let's go with Simon's proposal. Can I have a seconder that we do grant this £250 to the Steyning District? Thank you, Rodney. All those in favour? Thank you very much.
It's unanimous. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Russell. Okay, in that case, we'll go back to item 5, matters arising and actions, 5.1. John, can you take us through these, please?
Yes, certainly will, Chair. Bear with me. Okay, matters arising. 5.1, clerk to amend 10th November minutes, actioned. 5.2, clerk to amend 8th December minutes, actioned. 5.3, the question whether residents having option to remain anonymous when asking questions to be discussed by the working practices group. I put a supporting paper around about this, but we will actually discuss it at full council. 5.4, to investigate SPC's contractual payment obligations concerning the swimming pool. Going to be dealing with that under item 6.6. 5.5, clerk to explore within accounts software package to see if committed expenditure can be better presented and to take to working practices, working parties, so recommendation to be brought back. Did take it to working practices. Recommendation I noted again in supporting papers. Members felt the current I&E monthly accounts acceptable. Sorry, this is the recommendation, everyone. The members felt the current I&E monthly accounts acceptable and informative as they clearly show the annual budget and performance against the budget. They deemed the idea a nice to have rather than a necessity and agreed to recommend that they could not justify the additional cost required to offset the provision of a more accurate committed expenditure feature. That was that one. 5.6, James Corrigan invoice, clarity sought by the clerk, actioned. We're going to be dealing with that under item 6.4. 5.7, James Corrigan duty of care report circulated, actioned. 5.8, relaxation of signatory requirements. That's an update from myself. And I can report that there's been no clear advice other than to say to gain signatory as and when restrictions and personal circumstances allow, using all reasonable precautions to cover health and safety, as you might expect. I did, however, also ask our internal auditor what the latest situation was, and he said, and I quote, "A lot of councils are stating in the minutes the documents are properly agreed and that signing will take place at a convenient time." This is something we might want to consider. However, we are asking chairmen to come in if they are passing by, which occasionally happens, or we'll be sending them out in the mail to catch up with minutes signing is the idea. And those who are chairs have probably been contacted already, and certainly will be. In terms of the monthly finance reconciliation, and this is where this originally came from, I think it was brought up by Paul, we are almost up to date. I think I've mentioned this before, but there are certain items that we still need Tim and myself to get together on. And that does mean sort of closer proximity, and of course that's why we can't do it right now. But as soon as we can, then Tim's in a position to come in and we can complete these. So that's 5.
Thank you, John. Yeah, is that it?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, all right. Well, just to confirm, I have signed up some minutes, but because of the COVID, and I've just had my first jab along with, I guess, some others here, I'm not prepared to go in and sit closely to go through the other reconciliation. So we may need to agree in this committee what was suggested by John. But I think the only things outstanding are those and the petty cash, isn't it, John? I think those are the only two things. We're on top of the backs payments. They get put through my door if I've agreed them in the first place, and then I sign them, and then they get dropped back into the office. Sorry, John.
Yeah, I was just going to add end of month reconciliation, having just completed the January, so there's a couple of months of those to be done. But again, that's not necessarily pressing. That's something that we can do even annually. So there's no necessity, although as we've said before, our preference is to do it on a monthly basis because it helps that way.
John, would you like to just read out a proposal based on what the auditors have told us or suggested? Oh, he's thrown it on the floor.
Yeah, got it back.
Okay.
So I'll just read out what was said.
Yes, and I get somebody to propose it. So
that's probably best.
Yep.
A lot of councils are stating in the minutes that the documents are properly agreed and that signing will take place at a convenient time.
Okay, and in terms of properly agreed, they're properly agreed by you as the responsible financial officer. Is that what that means?
Well, it depends what the document is. So if it's minutes, then clearly the committee
That's
agrees
okay.
it.
Sure.
If it's finance reconciliation, then it's myself completing the monthly and you agreeing it as chair of F&GP.
Okay.
The same with petty cash. So it rather depends on the documents themselves.
Yeah, but the reconciliations, if I'm not coming in to go through those, then it's being reconciled on your recommendations, isn't it? As the RFO. Okay.
Yes, it is.
Just wanted to make that clear.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to propose the proposal that John has read out. Paul.
Well, I'm sorry, Tim. I mean, first I'd like to say thank you for all the work that you're doing on it. And secondly, to say that what is being proposed sounds a very good idea, but I'm afraid it isn't on the agenda. And so I'd suggest that it goes on the full council agenda and we can agree it then, but we really can't agree it under matters arising. I'm just being sprung on us like this, I'm afraid.
Well, we could do actually, because we do say to discuss and agree. But I take your point. If you feel it needs more discussion, then I'm quite happy to pass it on to council.
Well, I'm sorry. Actually, it doesn't say to discuss and agree. It just says relaxation of signatory requirements, update from clerk under matters arising and actions. So I take the point. Under there, it says to receive the following updates and to discuss. I beg your pardon. In that case, I withdraw that objection.
Do you? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if you're happy to do that, I don't mind either way. I'm quite relaxed about it. These are hard times, so we have to try and make decisions slightly on the hoof. Rodney, you had your hand up first.
I was going to say that. I mean, you know, if we're going to do a motion, you know, we've got to make sure that it's regular, because you know, when it suits us, we'll do one, but when it suits, then we can't do it at the meeting. I mean, I've had a couple of occasions where I've been told it's not on the agenda. You know, so we've got to have a regular thing. If it's not, you know, like on the agenda, I think we've, as Paul said, we should put it forward till next Monday to full council.
Rodney, I hear what you're saying. If you're bringing something up that really is not on the agenda, of course you can't. But this is on the agenda, and it quite clearly says to discuss and agree subsequent action. So look, as I say, I'm relaxed about it going forward. But there is a proposal. Paul's withdrawn his objection.
I'm happy to second. I'm happy to second. I think it does say that we can subsequently agree actions, and this is an action I think that we should agree sooner rather than later.
Yeah, but it's when it suits. And,
no, Rodney, that's not so. I can see where you're coming from, because occasionally you have brought up things which haven't been on the agenda, and we haven't accepted it.
You know,
anyway, so we've had a proposer and a seconder. So all those in favour? Thank you. Any objections? Abstentions? One. Thank you very much.
One abstention. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, 5.9, John.
Okay, thank you, Chair. 5.9, current arrangement with Steyning Bloom to be discussed following advice from auditor. That's obviously under 12.1. 5.10, clerk to check if monthly cash flow totals can be displayed against each code, and that's an update from myself. So if I may, this request is possible It's just not necessarily easy. I have discussed it with the software provider. The shame is it's not merely a case of turning a function on and gaining an extra line on our income and expenditure readouts, and this is where we'd like to see it, or at least that was the discussion that we had previously, if we were going to see it at all. There is a different way. There is another way. I could send out a very specific separate document because the software package is very compliant that way. It's called the Nominal Ledger. It highlights all payment details made in the chosen time period and does separate out each code line. It is not a document I normally send out because it is long. People might complain about the number of supporting papers already. This would be a supporting paper of this month, 27 pages. For that reason, it's not something that I would do, and nor I would say, is it something that we need to agree as a council. It was just something brought up that would be handy occasionally to know. Therefore, I would not advise that we need to consider it on a month-by-month basis. Also, and just briefly, there is another way of doing it, of course. If people are concerned about knowing how much we have spent under a particular code line, all we need to do is look at the previous month's I&E and look at the comparison between the two. So everyone does still have access to that, just not in a separate document.
Okay, any comments? Paul?
I'm just finding it a bit difficult to envisage this document without seeing a copy of it. I think it would have been very useful to have been sent an example before the meeting so that we could decide whether it was something that we wanted to see or not. Could I suggest that perhaps that happens between this meeting and the next one, and we just come back to it? Because I agree, it's unlikely I'm going to want to go through 20 odd pages, but it might be something that's really illuminating, and I think we should know.
Okay, no, I don't disagree with that. Could you bring a sample, John? Is that something that can be done relatively simply? Okay.
It is. Chair,
could you produce that as a briefing paper prior to the next meeting?
Well, because it's long.
Yes.
How about I do it immediately after the monthly reconciliation has occurred, and then that will give big. I mean, it would happen fairly close to when F&GP is, obviously. Anyway,
as long as it comes out in a timely fashion before the meeting, if it's that lengthy a document.
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks for that, Paul.
Thanks, Chair.
Okay. Right. Next, please, John. 511.
Yes, 511. Budget recommendation taken to full council for approval. Actioned. Obviously, motion taken forward to full council, agreed, and precept applications sent off to HDC and has been acknowledged. 512. S106 allocations explained. We'll come on to that under item 6.5. 513. Clerk informed that there were 2 outstanding FOI review requests. We're going to deal with that under item 7.1. 7.1. Let me just check. Yes, it is. Okay, thank you. 514. Personnel committee to discuss within SPC, whether SPC becomes an accredited living wage employer. Update from myself. This was discussed at personnel committee with its recommendation going to full council. So we will be discussing that next week, if we may. But I have sent out the personnel minutes already so that you've got an inkling as to how the discussion has gone. 515. Clerk asked to include links to website information pages within minutes information items put forward by Rodney last time out. Well, I included it in the minutes, so I hope that was what we were looking for, Rodney. So that was actioned. And that's the matters arising, Chair.
Thank you very much, John. Okay, so we'll move on to item 6, to receive following update reports and to discuss and agree any subsequent actions to be taken. To approve the list of payments. 6.1, right, here we are. Anybody got any comments to make? I haven't really got anything to raise. Rodney, have you got
No,
anything?
no.
You sure?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Paul?
I just had one, Chair, about the payment from St Andrew's Lodge. Are they kindly paying, even though they're not using the Steyning Centre? Are they doing something similar to whoever the other one was that was paying, not using?
John?
Well, Hazel's got a hand up. I was just going to
Oh,
say.
sorry, Hazel. Sorry, I couldn't see.
They had bookings between November and December when we weren't in lockdown. That's their payment for their bookings.
Fine,
They were
thank you.
late in paying because they had trouble with their bank signatories.
Oh, okay. So
Thank
this
you.
is a late payment.
It's a late payment, but yeah, it's for bookings that they actually had.
Okay, super. Thank you very much. Any other questions? No? Okay, in that case, can I propose that we approve the list of payments for January 2021? Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you very much, Simon. All those in favour?
Unanimous, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, item 6.2 to agree income and expenditure report. Again, I have nothing much to say on this personally. I'll open for questions in a second. We're actually in a pretty good shape for the end of the year, it would appear. Obviously, we're coming up close to the end of the year, and we're running just slightly below what we would be expected to at this time of year. So I think at the moment we're much better off than we thought that we would be 6 months before. So anybody got any questions on this or any queries for John? Paul?
Well, Chair, it was really about the other supporting document, the bank balances as of 31st January,
Yep.
which I think we're dealing with this under this as well. It's really just to say that I'm coming back to the point that I made a few meetings ago about earmarked reserves and all the rest of it. I find it really difficult to tell from this document how much we potentially have available for our projects. I mean, I don't think it is possible to tell, is it?
No, we had that discussion, as you said, about 2 or 3 meetings ago. John, I think, can we try and crack this one if we can, so that we can make it slightly more explicit? Thank you. John?
Yes, just to say, Paul, that there is under the progress report at the end of this agenda, under 9.9, the fact that we were to investigate possibly establishing a financial reserves policy. So that was what arose out of that discussion. And so obviously we can report some more details on that later on, Chair.
Okay. All right. But that's a good point. Anybody else got any other questions to raise? No? Okay, well, in that case, can we agree the income expenditure reports for January 2021? That's my proposal. Can I have a seconder, please? Deborah, thank you.
Deborah.
I nearly called you Brian. Seconded by Deborah. No, no, you're on mute.
Well, I did ask that my name changed.
Right. Anyway, all those in favour, please. Thank you very much.
Unanimous, thank you.
6.3 we've discussed. 6.4, discuss and agree payment of James Corrigan invoice following recommendations from Personnel Committee. John?
Yes, sent out a supporting paper in support of this. Obviously, it was discussed at Personnel Committee, and there was a recommendation from Personnel Committee that the outstanding invoice be paid. What I did also do was include the supporting paper that went out to Personnel Committee so that it could give a better indication of how we came to that recommendation. Right.
Just for members of the public, John, could you just really relate that, because it is, or it was in the past, slightly misleading the way we've been discussing it. So perhaps you could just
Okay, yes, it was
verbalize what you've already written.
all right. It was slightly difficult to tote up exactly where we were in the scheme of things. There were two agreements. The first one was that we should pay the first 10 hours. That was agreed. That amounted to the first invoice that was paid by us on the 4th of August. Then there was a second invoice that was received and paid October 20th, and that equated to 12.25 hours. That left 17.75 hours that was remaining on what was agreed within our second motion. That motion put forward and agreed at full council on the 20th of August 2020, and that was: the council resolves to appoint James Corrigan to offer additional support to the Clerk and Council, which shall be limited to 30 hours, or until such time as the Clerk's support team recommends to Council that it should cease. So really and effectively, what this third invoice did was to complete the 30 hours that had already been agreed. The other thing that was made it a little bit difficult to understand was the fact that with the invoice came a tote of the number of hours that had been undertaken by James, and that didn't equate necessarily to the amount that the invoice was asking for. This is because he determined that we needed the reports, and he was, even though it hadn't been agreed, he was going to do the work. He was going to show the amount of hours that he had done, even though it was in excess of the number of hours that were agreed. And then he just put forward that invoice. So what we're really talking about today, and today only, is that we agree to pay this particular invoice. The reason we have it is because of the amount involved, because it's over £1,000.
Thank you, John. Paul.
Chair, I'm sorry, I've got quite a number of problems with this. The first one is really, I'd like to invite John to rectify what he said on the 12th of January, because the minutes of the 12th of January read: Councillor Campbell suggested that the clerk had commissioned a third report from Mr. Corrigan and that it be circulated. The clerk said he had not received nor commissioned this report. Now, of course, we do now have report number 3, and it's the one entitled Report into the Council's Duty of Care, and it's dated the 17th of November 2020. And now, if we look at the narrative to the bill of the 28th of October, it says on the 2nd of October, telephone call with John, agreed to do report on duty of care. So it's clear that John did commission the duty of care report. It's also mentioned on the 7th of October, preparing 2 reports. And it's also incidentally mentioned on the 6th of October that the chairman of the council, Joanna Norcross, was also involved in this, because it says it will be for the council to decide if happy to pay additional hours, including report on duty of care. So it's pretty clear that John must have misspoken when he said he hadn't commissioned that or seen it. And we're now in a real old muddle as far as I can see, because on the, according to John's report, we paid £735, i.e. 12.25 hours on the 20th of October. But on the 10th of November, Councillor Lloyd proposed, seconded by Councillor Alexander, that the agreed 30 hours of work should be paid. Agreed. So we agreed back on the 10th of November that we would pay for 30 hours. For some reason that hasn't been done, and we weren't told that 12.25 hours had already been paid for. We've not seen that invoice, and indeed we still haven't seen the invoice we're being asked to authorise today. The only invoice we've ever seen is the one of the 28th of October 2020, which weirdly is for 36.75 hours. So the only invoice we've got is for the wrong number of hours still, which was the very point that we made right back in November when we said pay for the 30 hours we've contracted for. That should have been done back in November. I don't understand why this is still coming before us with another invoice that we haven't seen.
Thank you, Paul. John, can you try and clarify that?
Okay, I'll try and get it point by point. I didn't misspeak. I hadn't seen the report. In fact, I didn't see the report until the 25th of January when it was being discussed at personnel.
No, John, but you said that you didn't know anything about it, that you didn't commission it, and in fact you tried to suggest that it was an appendix to the second report, which was the first report. You specifically said that you didn't commission it.
I didn't commission it. I didn't. James was saying that he had work to complete. One of the elements I believe he may have said was a duty of care report, and he had other things that he was going to pass on anyway because he felt that he ought to. I said that we could only agree to what had been agreed in terms of the number of hours, and he said he would do it anyway. So I didn't commission the report, and I didn't see the report, and that's what I stated last time, and it is correct.
John,
Sorry,
John, can I just interrupt you there? Are we paying what we contracted to pay to James Corrigan? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, so we're not paying any more or any less.
No.
The 30 hours that we agreed in November, that hasn't been paid, but is part of this 40 hours. Is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying is we paid, so there was the 10 hours initially, that was in the first invoice that was paid.
Right.
Then of the 30 hours that had been agreed to be paid, the second invoice took care of 12 1/4, and this third invoice takes care of 17 3/4, and that therefore concludes the business that had already been agreed. So all we're doing today is agreeing that we actually pay this invoice because of the amount. And I would say that it went out as a supporting paper, so people have seen it. And also in terms of the previous invoices, they all go out to our signatories. So all the signatories do see the invoices before we pay. So there's nothing that isn't transparent here.
So we're not paying James any more than we originally contracted with him.
No, that's right.
Rodney.
I thought we only contracted for 30 hours. 30 hours at £60, £1,800, and that's what I think at the last meeting or the meeting before, I think Councillor Northern proposed it. Is that what we pay? Now, if we paid £600 and we paid 735, then we've got about another 665 to pay. No, we haven't, less than that. So these figures that John has sent, they're so confusing. We haven't seen this invoice for 1,065. We've seen the other two, and that's fair enough. I mean, the signatures see that, and there's no problem. That's what we paid for, but it's what we are due to pay. It seems to be the grey area. No one's arguing that we paid £600 on the 6th of August or whenever it was, and 730 on the 20th of October. It's this extra bit, and we haven't even seen the invoice.
John, can you respond to that, please?
I would say that the invoices have gone out. Also, this is a recommendation from personnel to pay. And also in terms of that point, Rodney, At the 14th of July F&GP meeting, it was proposed, and this is part of the supporting paper, that a budget of up to 600 be allocated for specialist input mentoring from an independent council clerk for the SPC clerk, and to advise to councillors in regard to their respective roles and responsibilities, and in particular for the production of agenda and minutes. So that then was dealt with, and that was the first invoice for 10 hours. The 30 hours was then separate to that, making a total of 40 hours. And that was the 20th of August motion, as I mentioned earlier.
Okay. Simon.
I think, if I'm honest, from memory, when I've seen the information on this, we've actually had a lot more than the 40 hours anyway from James Corrigan. From memory, when he totaled up how many hours he's worked for us, it went far in excess of 40. I think we're just fighting and quabbling over semantics. The guy's got an invoice for 17 and 3/4 hours. It's time we just paid it and get on with it. You know, we've had the advice, we've had the information, and the committee is suggesting that the personnel committee is suggesting we pay it. So let's just pay it.
You, Paul?
Well, Chair, we've just gone round in circles since November. In November, we resolved to pay for the 30 hours. And here we are in February, after the Personnel Committee has also spent time on this, saying, let's pay for 30 hours. I just don't understand it. The whole point was that the 28th October invoice, he'd done a lot more work, but he was invoicing for 36.75 hours. And so the thing that we were supposed to be sorting out between November and now is, are we just sticking to the 30 hours we contracted, or are we voluntarily paying the 6.75 hours because he might have been given a bit of a hint by all those that he discussed it with when he kept on saying, as he did, it's going to be up to the council if they want to pay any more than the 30 hours. Was he given a steer to that effect? Are we morally obliged to pay for that extra 6.75 hours? But it's just crazy that we agreed in November to pay 30 hours, and here we are in February saying, shall we pay for 30 hours? Yes, we've already agreed to do that, Chair.
Thank you, Paul. John.
Precisely that. So all we need to do is agree to pay the second invoice that takes us up to the end of the 30 hours.
No,
that's the 17 and 3/4 hours.
No, I'm sorry, Chair, that's not the point. We've agreed to pay the 30 hours. That invoice should have been paid back in November. The issue is that there's a further 6.75 hours under the October 28th one. Are we going to pay it or not?
Well, we've already agreed that we're not going to pay that,
well,
because we're only contracting him for the 30 hours. So frankly, because we've already agreed this, John, you just go ahead and pay it, providing that we don't exceed the 40 hours that we contracted him for.
Yeah, so the only reason that I bring it to committee is that it's over the £1,000 mark, right. And for that reason,
Chair, we agreed this in November.
Paul, fine. I'm just going to say the same thing, but John, we've already agreed it in November, so you don't need to come to us for any further agreement. You can just pay it.
Okay.
Okay, as long as the important thing for this committee is to make sure that all we're paying for are the 40 hours that we've contracted from him. Nothing more or nothing less.
Precisely that, and that was why it was recommended by.
So it might be good to circulate, if you would, to the committee the dates of the payments and so on, so that we can correlate those against the invoices, just so that everybody here is fully cognizant of what's been done.
Okay. Chair, I thought I had done that with supporting papers, but I will.
Well, if you would do it again, just so that we know that has finally been done and has been put to bed.
Absolutely, no problem.
Thank you very much. Right, 6.5, to receive the monthly 2021 SIL report. John?
Yes, so this is monthly item. So I had just amended what has happened previously and sent out. Now we are to receive it. We don't need to discuss and agree. However, and had been mentioned under matters arising, there was a request for a little bit more information with regards to the last box that's within the S106 monies payment. And just to show you, that's the smaller box down here within supporting papers.
Yeah.
If I allow you just a few moments to find that.
We're talking about this piece of paper here. Yeah.
No, Chair, the appendix to it.
PA3.
Oh, sorry. This one here. Got
Yeah,
you.
so this was
Apologies. Yeah.
6.5.2 in terms of the number.
Yeah. No, I got it. Okay.
Yeah. So the last page.
Mm-hmm.
And the request was to understand a little bit more about the phraseology and what it actually meant. So,
Oh, yes, I remember. Yeah.
if I may, Chair, just to carry
Yep.
on.
Fire away.
Okay, so within that box there are headings, and if I go through each of them, and hopefully this will add to your understanding. So the term potential. So this is totals from projects that for whatever reason have not been completed, but where S106 monies have been calculated and were to be sent if the projects were to be completed. So it may be that there are outstanding projects that will be done. It could be there are outstanding projects that won't actually be done, but they are still nonetheless under potential, and it's for HDC to deal with those that will never be done at whatever time.
Okay.
Under collected, this is all S106 monies collected from construction projects. Simple as that. Under spent, that's the amount which has been spent, and from that which has been collected. So the amount spent from the total amount that's been collected. Then available, that's the amount which is not yet spent from monies collected. So basically collected minus spent equals available. And then allocated. This is the slightly tricky one, in that it's money earmarked for certain community projects, but as yet unspent. Now, what does that mean? Well, this may either be part of an existing community application that is yet to be spent, or money that was designated within the original construction project itself towards a specific community project, as it may mitigate against the original installation. But it is as yet to be spent. Now, first, maybe if I take any questions, if there are any, and then I might explain what I've done since.
Anybody got any questions? Steve?
Thank you, and apologies to everyone for joining late.
No problem.
John, you said that collected minus spent equals available.
Yeah.
Where does that leave allocated? I would have thought allocated. I would have thought that collected minus allocated minus spent would be available, because if you've allocated, it's not available for anything else.
Yes, this is why it gets slightly complicated, because the allocated doesn't necessarily mean that it's spent, because some projects, when the application goes through, and I think this comes under maybe the festival was a project that asked for electrics and monies, water installation to help with future festivals.
John, sorry, I appreciate that, but just because something's allocated doesn't mean you can't unallocate it. But right now, at the snapshot of this report, if we've allocated 3,189 to sustainable transport, then I think that needs to come out of the available. It's not available to anything else. It's allocated. You can unallocate it if the project changes. But in my understanding of this type of analysis, it's collected, and sorry, it's the collected minus the allocated minus the spent equals what's remaining available at this snapshot. Does that not make sense? It'd be interesting to hear from others.
No, I see where Steve is going with this, I have to say, but I think, John, you've already said that it makes it complicated. but there is some logic to what Steve is saying. These are sort of accounting processes. If it's allocated, he's right, it is allocated, and therefore it comes out of the spent figure. If we then unallocate it, well, obviously that's another thing.
Yes, may I?
Yeah, do.
Yeah, so if it's allocated to some projects, but the projects have overestimated what the project has spent, then it can be allocated, but it might still be available once that project has definitely been completed and there's an understanding as to what the difference may be. So then that money can become available once more. Yeah,
I understand that.
Yeah, they've done it a very strange way in some respects, because also, as I say, there are certain projects. So if there was a construction of, I don't know, but in terms of highway, they may say, well, in this instance, in future, we might suggest that there could be a pathway put beside the new road that was installed. But we're not going to do it, but we might mitigate against, health and safety issues for pedestrians by suggesting that the community might want to put together an application to put a pathway in, and therefore we're going to give certain amounts of money. What this means is that there are certain projects that we don't know what the allocation is. No one else necessarily does. And what I've actually said to HDC is it would be quite nice to know what the original project papers said was to be allocated towards applications, because we might want to, aid that process and get those projects done for the benefit of the community if they can only be spent on that particular mitigation project.
Chair, may I just try and explain, just to clarify one last point, and then I'll leave it. But the first line, I think, illustrates the problem. If I look at the first line, that tells me I have £792 available, but I don't, because that's allocated at this snapshot, at this point in time, that's allocated to something else. But it would tell me that I've got 792 available. I don't follow the logic, but I'll leave it at that.
Paul.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I absolutely concur with what Steve's saying. I think he's absolutely right. And the reason I really had my hand up, and John has picked up on it, is these things that are allocated, the funds that are allocated, surely we should know what they're allocated to so that we can chase them up, so that these funds aren't sitting around doing nothing forever. And if they can be unallocated before the time limit expires, it would be jolly good to do so. And I think, John, you said that nobody knows what they're allocated to, which seems an extraordinary statement.
Through you, Chair. Well, when I say nobody, I'm sure that there are people and some within HDC, but what's important is that we understand what should be going towards projects. It actually helps HDC. I have to agree with Steve, by the way. I wouldn't have necessarily set it out in this way, but that's the way that they have done it, which is why it's a little bit difficult to understand. But what I have said to HDC is that, look, if they can give us more detail, this is in their best interest, because actually, you will know this, Tim, they want to get shot of S106. They want to just deal with still, because that's the way to go. So they want to zero out these funds, make sure that they are dealt with so that they can effectively move on. Now, we might be helping in terms of the 20-mile-per-hour project, in terms of the highways monies from West Sussex County Council. But as I said to HDC, look, if you can tell us a little bit more detail, we might be able to pursue some of these projects and get them done and dusted. And so we can move on from there, especially if they have to be, a particular type of project, because it mitigated against the original project.
John, I think the question's been raised, and I think it's a very reasonable question. I think we should ask Horsham to give us more detail about the allocated funds as to what projects they were. Now, if you have trouble, let me know, and then I can speak to somebody there to see if we can if we can get that information. I think it's right and proper. And as you said, it means that we might be able to speed the allocation of those funds through and get whatever projects against those that we can. Paul.
Chair, I've just been looking at this and I'm beginning to realise that the information is here. So if you look at the bottom line in that box, sustainable transport, West Sussex County Council 93006, and then you look at the table above, 3 boxes up, you'll see application number DC 2030, 4th box along type, sustainable transport, West Sussex County Council 93006. And it turns out that it's been allocated for a school safety zone scheme in Steyning. Now, I mean, I can't absorb at the moment any more than that, but I mean, it does look to me as though there is an audit trail, and we ought to be finding out whether that's been done, whether there's more money we could spend in the school safety zone, etc. And
Good
maybe
point.
the other numbers are equally can be tracked
They
through.
may well be. Well spotted. John, you might not have to get hold of them then. We may well have the information, but I think we need some time to absorb that.
Through
Yes,
to
go
you,
on.
Chair.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, I'm aware of that information, and thanks, Paul, for bringing it up, because there is an element there, but it's still all in the detail. And what we really need to know is, say, for projects that have been completed, like the festival, enhancement of water and electricity, because it's done, maybe they don't realise that there's still, it's not monies that's going to be earmarked towards that project anymore. Because it's done, it becomes available. And it's so, working that out also.
Well, sorry, just as a point of accuracy, John, you did say that nobody knew, and then you said, well, actually, some people may know, but we don't know. And now you say, well, actually, I did know.
John.
No, I know because of the information that we have in the table, we don't know enough detail to complete this. And what I have done, as I say, for clarity, is ask HCC to give us more information so we can move this forward.
Okay, well, let's go along those lines. If you don't believe that the detail is there, then that's the detail that we need. But Simon.
I was going to say, I think we're going round and round in circles. The table itself, when you look at it, it's only actually that last line. There's any available funds for sustainable transport. Everything else is actually zeroed out or has been allocated. When you look at the tables above, the actual safety zone for the schools, there's 2 of them on there. Both have been finished, second to last column. But when you scroll back through the table itself, you'll actually see the ones that are marked as under construction or not started. One would assume that's where the funds have been allocated to. So we have all the detail in front of us. It's just we're not reading the detail how it's intended. You've actually got to go back 3 pages or 2 pages to get the full information.
Okay, well, look, we need to work some more on that. There's no point in us doing it on the hoof now. So I would suggest, John, that we have a discussion about it, you and I, after the meeting. And as I say, I think we should get hold of Horsham if we feel that there's any detail that we still lack. But we take notice of what Simon's just pointed out, and Paul, and we can work it up from there and hopefully come back to the next meeting with much more detail to it. Right. Sorry, Paul. Can
I just say, yeah, I think that's absolutely great. The only thing I'd suggest is that it may not just be Horsham that needs to be asked. It may be West Sussex, because some of these funds seem to be theirs and their project. So.
Yeah. Okay. That's a good point.
West Sussex funds are in the table anyway.
Yes, I know they are, but we still might need the detail on it. So if everybody's happy with that, then John and I would do it, and we'll report back before the next meeting.
Thank you, Chair.
6.6, discuss and agree advice from solicitor concerning SBC payment obligations with regards to the Steyning swimming pool. Right, so you've had the confidential paper, item 6.6. John, is this something that we really should be discussing in open session?
Well, it was to gain an idea as to where we want to go from here. It might be that the details need to be dealt with in confidential session, but as it stands, and following the advice of the solicitor. I just needed to gain an opinion as to, you know, which direction we wanted to go and what to do next, really.
Okay, all right. Well, without disclosing too much, we've all had the report. Anybody want to raise any questions with the recommendations from our solicitors? Paul?
Well, Chair, I think the recommendations are clear, and it's. I don't think we didn't have much choice, other than the point that I raised, which was that the solicitor has advised that this document was executed as a deed, and I've given reasons why I'm doubtful about that, and I would have thought it sensible just to go back and double check that point with him. I've given chapter and verse as to why, while the other parties executed as a deed, I don't believe Steyning Parish Council did. I'm not saying it didn't, but I'm saying it's, given the amount of money involved, I'd have thought it'd be worth just going back to the solicitor to say, in the light of this information, are you sure?
John?
Yes, thank you, Chair. After discussion with yourself, did actually send this very question, Paul, to the solicitor and got the reply back today. Did you want me to read it out, Chair? I know.
Well, as long as you feel that it's appropriate to read out, by all means do. There must be a concluding paragraph there, I would guess.
Well, the concluding statement is, our strong advice is therefore that the Parish Council should act in accordance with the documents and seek a way forward.
Okay.
So he's confirmed that we did execute it as a deed. Is that right? I mean, if we have, if that's the case, yes, that's fine.
Right.
Yeah.
So what he's doing. Okay. All right. Well, look, I think it would be good for the committee to see that response from them. We don't need to make really. We're still in COVID, and any push from us to have our probably what will be our first meeting of this management committee is probably not going to happen. So I would have thought we could wait till the next meeting if we need to discuss this any further. But frankly, I would hope that the letter kills off one side of it, which is the deeds, and therefore from then on it's just a matter of how we want to play it, whether we want to just push for them to set up the management committee so that we can appear on it, so that we can make presentations to them, ask some questions, and anything else that this committee might feel is necessary. Rodney.
Well, yeah, I think one of the important things will be about asking for a rebate. I mean, this is what kicked off the whole of this swimming pool saga. So, I mean, that is an important thing that, you know, we need to find this out as well. Yeah.
Well, Horsham have put in something £1.5 million into the leisure centres at the moment. So I think the possibility of getting a rebate, if you're thinking about the COVID, then I'm not sure that that's likely, but I see no harm in asking for it. If you're thinking of a rebate as we previously discussed, then no, because that's in our agreement. John, anything further to add to that? No? Okay. Well, then we'll bring that back, I think, to the next meeting, and perhaps you can circulate the advice from the solicitor. Steve.
Yeah, Chair, sorry, I don't understand what we bring back to the next meeting, because the agenda item says to discuss and agree the advice from the solicitor. It seems that's quite clear.
Yeah, but we haven't seen. Sorry to interrupt, Steve, but we haven't seen that. We haven't seen the email or the letter from the solicitor. So I'm just saying, let's bring it back to the next meeting. We'll all have seen it. We're all happy then that the deeds were executed in the correct way. And then we will have to discuss then how we want to take it forward as far as the management committee is concerned, and any rebates as Rodney has mentioned.
Okay.
Okay. Right, item 7, update on any news relating to data protection and freedom of information requests from the clerk.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So, small summary report. I'm currently dealing with a freedom of information request that I intend to respond to by the end of the week, this current one, and report the request and response to you at the next F&GP meeting. I'm also dealing with now 3 outstanding review requests, all of which I intend to respond to before the end of this month. Then we can review all responses at the next opportunity when F&GP committee next meet, I should say. I will just go into the details of one of them, and you'll understand why perhaps when I do. The most urgent of these 3 requests is as follows. We received an FOI in autumn of last year, autumn of 2019, and the FOI panel refused it as manifestly unreasonable. A review request was also refused by the FOI panel as it was said to not be within the, or requested not within the appropriate time frame. Now, following that, the ICO wrote to me on the 23rd of December to ask us, that is our council, to reconsider our position. I brought the matter up with the office support team and wrote my response to the ICO, passing it by the chair and vice chair of the council before sending it off. So we received a letter, as I say, on the 23rd. I just responded to that. I am proposing we may be in a position to more substantively respond to the complainant after all, but it rather does depend on the next 2 weeks and with assistance from 1 or 2 councillors. So obviously, as I say, I can report on all of those when we're a bit closer to completion, Chair.
Yeah, John, just so for clarity, we're being instructed to do this by the ICO. Is that what you're saying?
So this particular review request, yeah, there was a complaint from that request.
Oh, okay, that's what I think.
And that is why, sorry, Chair, that,
okay,
everyone, that's why it came back to me, because it then became a complaint and the ICO needed us to work on that.
And they've upheld the complaint, and that's why they've asked us to.
They certainly asked us to reconsider based upon this information, which is why I'm doing.
Okay, thank you. Anybody got any questions? No? Okay, thank you, John. Right, item 8, requested motions. Rodney, this is really down to you, isn't it?
Yes, I think so. Why I'm raising it is because evidently, according to one of the officers of HDC, that now West Sussex County Council have stopped giving HDC £10,000 grant, which helps towards cleaning up any graffiti. Now that means that Horsham may not be so willing in the future, to do cleaning up without charging. And to me, I think this is a major thing. I know it's only a £10,000, but Horsham have always done a good job. They've cleaned up, different bits of graffiti, but somehow this £10,000 has been stopped by County Council. And I think that if we're not careful, we could get lumbered in graffiti happening, and Horsham saying, well, we can't do it because we haven't got the money now, and also the owner needs to pay for it. It's really a different ball game, and I just feel that it doesn't really just affect Steyning. It's really all the councils on Horsham District Council. And that's why I suggested that maybe Steyning could bring something up with help, to move it forward as a big body rather than just Steyning approaching it. I mean, it's, to me, the county have stopped 10 grand, the overall of that is peanuts. I know what they will say, that, they've got other expenses, but it could affect us purely, in the street, as it were. And I just feel that we should have some sort of input.
All right, does anybody else have a comment to make on that? Paul?
Yeah, well, I think I really support what Rodney's saying, that it's always been the case that local authorities recognise that any sort of graffiti attracts more graffiti, and it's really, really important to get on top of it promptly. And that's why most councils offer this service of cleaning it off all public property as quickly as they can, and cleaning it off private property subject to consent, often free, but certainly at a very attractive rate, because the public domain goes downhill very rapidly if you don't keep on top of graffiti. So it is an issue, I think, that the funding to enable Horsham to do this has been reduced, and I don't think there's been any publicity about that. And I think Rodney's right, that maybe HALC is the body to try and put some pressure on West Sussex to get that funding reinstated, because graffiti, it's a blight on not just this area, but the whole of the Horsham area. And as Rodney says, Horsham's done a jolly good job up till now in keeping on top of it, and it would be a shame that might no longer be the case. And there are the first signs of it not being the case, in that I haven't seen them myself, but apparently there are areas in Steyning where on telephone cabinets where one would normally expect it to be cleaned off promptly, it hasn't happened. So I think, get HALC on the job.
Okay. Simon?
I think we've heard for the last year from West Sussex, from David Barling, and from Horsham, from yourself and Bob, how all councils are struggling on funds. So I'm not surprised that funds have been withdrawn on this, because of course they've got to prioritise where they're placing their funds. I think by upsetting the apple cart here, you're risking other services also being affected. At the end of the day, Horsham can only do what they can do. West Sussex have only got a certain amount of money. They don't have a magic tree in their back garden to go and pluck more money from. They've lost money immensely because of COVID. So I think we should sort of count ourselves lucky for the services we are getting.
I think so far, if I'm right in saying, John, they've responded quite favourably, haven't they, to any request to remove the graffiti. Go on. You were going to say something?
Yes. Well, in response to that, yes, very positive relationship we have with this particular arm of Horsham District Council. Always work closely with us, and always very prompt in the actions that we request. These are the same guys that have done additional work, on the high street in terms of bin emptying and whatever, just to help us. So we do have a very good and positive relationship. I'm not sure how it works with other councils, but then obviously we're only dealing with our own council here. So as I put in the supporting paper, hopefully to help with this discussion and for Rodney's motion, we don't actually have a responsibility for clearing graffiti unless there's a request from a resident for us to pass on the report to HDC. If it is on our property, then obviously we try and get the caretakers or the wardens or both to deal with it. But as I say, in terms of what HDC can do for us, there's a very positive relationship.
Thank you. Rodney?
Well, I was going to say, that's what I said in the first place. Horsham have always done it in the past. There's been no problem, but things could change, and we need to be ahead of it rather than wait until the high street is graffitied and then we all say, oh, this is bad. Don't forget, our high street, our town, visitors. We rely on visitors, tourism. 3 eateries have been awarded things. And you know, we should be proud. And you know, the high street, you know, it's got grade 2 listed buildings. You know, we should be extra cautious. Now, you know, I fully appreciate what Councillor Alexander said about you know, they've had other costs. We know that, but this is what I'm saying. Let's get ahead of it. Let's try and get ahead of it before the free.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Rodney. Joanna?
I have a lot of sympathy with what Rodney's saying, and I think obviously, you know, none of us like graffiti, and he's quite right. I mean, HDC have done a great job, and it would be a great pity if they aren't able to continue to do so. It's more of a question really than anything else. I'm just not entirely clear what it is that's being proposed here that we're going to do, other than to register our disappointment with West Sussex, presumably, because they're the people who've withdrawn the funding. I mean, is the proposal that we talk to Halcon and suggest to them that we would like to register our disappointment with West Sussex, and hopefully all other parish councils do the same, or what? I mean, I'm not clear. I think we all agree that graffiti is a terrible thing, and that it's a great pity that HDC apparently are no longer being funded to clear it up. But what are we proposing?
Well, as far as I understand it, the proposal, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Rodney, is that we work with HALC, or we ask HALC to get in touch with all of the district councils within Horsham District, and that we put together a joint approach to Horsham initially, I guess, because that's where we make our reports to, that we would like this service to continue, so that our rural communities are not blighted. They're already suffering, and even when COVID, which we hope will be over sooner rather than later, our high streets have got to recover. Having them covered in graffiti is not going to attract the tourists. So that seems to be the proposal, is that we work with HALC and the other parish councils to lobby Horsham, and eventually for Horsham to lobby West Sussex. And I'm quite happy to bring that up at council level in Horsham if necessary. Hazel. Sorry, Steve, I'll come back to you in a sec, Steve, sorry.
Horsham haven't said that they won't remove the graffiti. They do it from public property, but they're not doing it on private property because they can't afford to do it on private property.
No, because they will charge presumably a modest fee on the private side of it. So no, I think what Rodney's saying, correct me again if I'm wrong, is that we should just get ahead of the game, because it's likely that this service is going to be stopped. So I think it's probably quite a good idea to get the ball rolling. Steve.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I don't disagree at all with the sentiments of the importance of dealing with graffiti, and the fact that a little bit of graffiti can turn into a lot of graffiti and soon become a blight. I don't think this is an argument, you know, for or against graffiti. I'm a little concerned that whilst I hear about getting ahead of the game, I'm a bit concerned that we actually might precipitate the reduction ourselves. Horsham haven't said anything to us yet about stopping this, so I think the time to act is if they table that. I think if we start, you know, a movement focusing on this, we might actually precipitate the reduction. So I think we're just a little bit premature.
Thanks, Steve. Paul?
Yes, Chair, I think you captured very well what the idea would be, as I understand it from Rodney, and I'd certainly support that. The point is that we're not precipitating something, because the only reason we're discussing this at all is because we had the report from John that Horsham had specifically said that the reason that they weren't able to deal with some of the stuff was because of the reduction in funding from West Sussex. So John slightly implied that we might somehow damage our relationship with the Horsham team. I don't see that at all. The idea is to support them and to ensure that they get as much funding as is possible, if you know, with pressure from HALC if possible, to ensure that funding is maintained and even increased. I don't see any basis on which we could say that that was going to prejudice our relationship with the team. We're very, very supportive of them, and we want them to carry on from strength to strength and not just wither away.
I think too, with the support of myself and Josh and the other district councillors within Horsham, if we do get an initiative going, I think they'll be extremely supportive of it. There are obviously some villages that don't have any issues at all, but there are others, I guess, like Pulborough. I don't know, I'm speaking off the top of my head. So, but maybe at Pulborough and Billingshurst and the other larger towns, that they do actually have a problem. And I'm absolutely sure that they have a problem in Horsham town itself. So I think it would be a good approach to see where sort of Houck sit with this, and just see if we can get something moving. And I'm quite happy to support it within Horsham. I'm sure Bob Platt will, and the other district councillors. So I'm not too concerned, as we have quite close links with them, of it precipitating anything at this stage, if I'm honest. So if nobody's got anything else to say, I think what we'll do is, Rodney, can you simplify your proposal, because it was quite a lengthy one?
Oh,
if you could.
Well,
it sort of went on for nearly a page, so I was a bit.
Yeah, well, yeah, but I was trying to kind of.
No, I know you were, yeah, but could you simplify it as a proposal?
Oh, I'm no good at doing that sort of thing quickly. I mean, I think you've actually kind of explained it quite well, Jim.
Okay. Well, Paul, I think is going to come to you.
I defer to you, Tim, if you prefer to do it.
No, I'm quite happy for you to propose it, as long as it's short.
Okay, well, I'm just doing it completely off the top of my head. Yeah. The SPC, the proposal is that SPC should liaise with Houck with a view to exerting such pressure as it can to ensure that the graffiti removal service is maintained and or enhanced. Yep. Does that do it?
In the rural communities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, I'll propose that then. Well done, Paul, thank you.
Seconder, please.
I think I'll second it then.
Okay. All those in favour?
Unanimous, thank you.
Okay, thanks guys, thank you very much. Okay, right, 9, progress report, please, John.
Okay, thank you, Chair. 9.1, asset register to be updated and brought to next F&GP meeting. That's ongoing. 9.2, clerk's outstanding list of actions to be discussed at personnel committee. That's ongoing, but because we haven't had an opportunity, we've discussed much at a number of personnel committees, but this hadn't managed to get onto an agenda yet. But in discussion with Tim, we were looking at a provisional date of the 24th of February for the next personnel committee. Obviously, I'll put out details to follow, but that hopefully will be discussed then. 9.3, playground temporary laminated signage to include hard backing and then to be assessed. We discussed this last meeting, and there was a suggestion that maybe we could upgrade our temporary situation by painting the backboards effectively black to make them look a little bit more professional. I'm not sure if we've done every single one, but we're well on the way to completing most of those now. I think they look pretty good, and we'll try and get a picture out to you so that we can show that. There was also, and Paul's just about to remind us all, I'm sure, there was also a request that maybe we get in touch with HDC because they had put up on their playgrounds that they looked after signage, I think on Corex board or similar. Now Hazel's made a number of attempts to get in touch with them and see if we can get hold of those particular boards, as yet unsuccessful, but we'll continue to see if we can look at that and arrange for that. And of course, if we can find it, I'll send that out to you so that you can see what we're.
Can I just ask, John, if I may interrupt, Hazel, have you been trying to get hold of the actual boards themselves, or just the specifications for it, or the suppliers, or what?
I've been emailing Anna at Horsham District Council that does the play areas. One, to try and get hold of inspections to come, inspection reports to come monthly, and to find out where she gets the signs made and whether we could also go there to get.
Okay, and you've not had any response, or?
No, she's not coming
Okay.
back. I've tried 3
Can
times.
you
as well.
can you pass all the information across to me, and I'll make sure you get a response.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, John, I interrupted you.
No, thank you, Chair. So moving on, 9.4, 3-year business plan compilation deferred until spring 2021, and to budget working party. Well, we're fast approaching spring 2021, and so again we were looking at getting a provisional date in for this, and a few of the other items yet to be discussed. We were thinking the 11th of March looked like a good provisional date, so I will be getting that detail out to everyone. Same can be said for the next.
Sorry, John, just before you go on to there, can you make sure that when we put this together that you send the existing business plan with the papers?
Yeah, the existing business plan was actually removed from the website. We did have a business plan, but it was decided that it wasn't.
No, I understand, because it was out of date. So, but I think it would be worthwhile the members having it, so that we've got some reference for the future.
Absolutely, Chair. Yeah, so that people can understand certainly what we have done. It could provide a framework. It doesn't have to be the same. It's down to us, clearly, but yeah, I can send it out. So 9.5, scheme to allocate tablets to councillors to be discussed at budget working party. Hoping to do this at the same time. Now, as Tim mentioned before, current financial standing looking pretty good, actually. And as we tend to do at the end of year, we can assess where we are and see if some of those projects that we have been looking at, we might want to pursue and get done before the end of the financial year, or at least earmark funds towards completing that. And certainly this was one of those that we were considering doing. And again, this is what we will discuss on the 11th of March. 9.6, project details to be prioritised, similar sort of vein, and this will allow us again on the 11th of March to see, you know, what maybe the top 1, 2 or 3 are, and if we have monies available to organise that, as I say, within this financial year.
Sorry, John, just before you go on, so that meeting hopefully can make recommendations to the council meeting, which will be the following week or whenever it is, because obviously we want to get it all tied up before the end of the financial year if we're going to earmark reserves.
Exactly that, Chair. Yeah.
All right, thank you very much.
Excuse me, Tim. Sorry, is
Yeah,
it
sure.
is it a working party?
Yeah, it's a working party of all of the F&GP.
Oh right, okay, thank you.
Sorry, can you repeat the date, please?
11th of March.
Thank you. Have I just forgotten about that, or is this the
No,
first?
no, it hasn't been arranged. It's
Oh,
this is why John's making it. He asked me if I had certain dates, and certain dates I couldn't do, and that was the only date that I could do. So.
Yes, through you, Chair. Yes. So as I said, a provisional date. I hoped that this was an initial forum to get the message out there if there were any particular issues, because obviously I want as many, if not all of you, available, because it could actually be quite important and interesting, because it's the ability to, you know, get a few things done in short order. So 11th of March. 9.7, total fixed assets amount to be amended due to recent installations at end of financial year. You'll recall this was an action based upon the external auditor's recommendation. That can only be done at the end of year. So when we get to the end of year, I can do it. That's why it's ongoing. 9.8, arrange an all F&GP member working party to discuss issues raised by Councillor Campbell re internal audit. Again, 11th of March. We figured that this we could do, because obviously it's a financial issue, so that we could do that at the same time if time allowed, and because it involved the same people. And 9.9, SBC to investigate possibly establishing a financial reserves policy. Now we again thought, all right, we'll attempt to deal with it at the 11th of March. It may be that we run out of time and have to consider a different date, but this is less time critical, so we can come back to that. But initially, I think we think we can try and put it on the agenda. 9.10, clerk to seek confirmation that swimming pool responded to residents' complaint. Haven't quite got that yet. It's in ongoing. It's slightly less important than a number of other things, so I'll get around to it when I can, priority wise.
John, just before we go on, Rodney's got his hand raised.
Yes, 9.10. You know, ongoing. This has been ongoing since last April. You know, are you saying that we've not had anything from the Steyning Centre or the Leisure Centre on this, John? I mean, you know, that resident must be well, he must be
dead and gone.
I mean, you know, April. You know, if he's put a complaint in last April and it's still ongoing, you know, I think, in all fairness, I don't really have to say a lot more.
No, you don't. But I think John's going to explain it. But I don't know how much COVID has affected this, but I suspect quite a lot. John.
Yeah, as a reminder, the centre was closed for a fair period of time, and I'm not sure as to how open it has been, to what degree. Frankly, this was a complaint made by a resident to them. They only CC'd us in just to make us aware of it. So this is really between the resident and the centre. We were merely checking that the centre had come through and responded. So it may well have been the response was in short order. The difficulty is getting hold of people, especially when it was closed down, and subsequent to that, the fact that it isn't necessarily the highest priority, and when I can, I'll get around to, you know, ensuring that.
Well, yeah, but sorry, Tim, but I mean,
No,
with emails and that, I mean, I should think the management at the Leisure Centre would be picking things up, John, and it'd be nice to find out if they have actually dealt with it. You know, I mean, if we were copied into the email by the resident, you know, we've got a bit of a moral duty just to make sure that it's been dealt with. You know, you know, I know it's not our direct concern, but the very fact that the resident has, you know, brought us into the equation, as it were, I think we should, you know.
Well, I think the message is clear. So, John, if you could get a follow-up email off to the swimming pool, perhaps in the next few days, if you presumably you've got a contact there, and ask them for a response in the next 7 days or something. Not we can do anything about it, but at least we give him a timescale. Steve.
Yeah, I am just wondering. Sorry, why this is why we're actually doing this. We passed it on to start with. It's a complaint against us, the swimming pool, the centre. We're always talking about the workload in the office, and now we're taking on another task, which I think is it's the swimming pool centre's responsibility. I agree. When as and when there's a committee up and running, we can pick these things up now. It just seems we're stepping outside our own responsibility, really.
Okay. Well, we have been asked. We have been copied in, and it has been raised at meetings, and we haven't been able to respond to it. So we ought to be able to do that. But I would agree. We don't want to spend a lot of time on it. So
no. Well,
I think
we haven't
just a simple email. So anyway, let's finish with that. I can't. Paul.
So just a very quick point. I just wanted to agree with the principle of what Steve said. I may be misremembering it, but I thought it was rather more than that we were copied in. I thought that the resident wrote to us because they were not getting satisfaction from the leisure centre. So it wasn't just a CC, we were asked to intervene. And of course, we contribute significant funds down there. And I think that's why we felt that we needed to try and achieve something. Whether there's any point in chasing it up after this length of time,
well, probably not. But I think it's worth at least to get the email off and feel that we've done the right thing by the resident. John, hello.
Yes, that's
Yeah,
why it's not going. Yes, I will do it.
Okay, all right, thanks so much. Right, item 10. Any correspondence items, information items, John?
Nothing that I had.
Okay, thank you. In that case, we'll go into confidential session. So,
sorry, Chair, I do beg your pardon. There's something coming to my head that we had something in from Horsham about COVID grants available to businesses.
Yeah, it's something I sent through
2 weeks ago, I think. And it struck me that it was something that we could apply for. And I just wondered whether we were going to.
Pass on that because I don't know whether it was aimed at us. John.
I think I know the one that you're talking about, Paul. This was to make up for less income from local businesses. That particular grant application.
Yes.
That one I can say now. This is a particular line that we have already explored and successfully too, with 2 applications, one for 10,000 and one for 2,000 that have been agreed and have come to us. And yes, we are actually well on the way to completing this particular application for that very grant. So hopefully we'll get some news in about 3 or 4 weeks time.
I'm not sure. Okay, not 100% because you applied for this quite some time ago, John, didn't you?
Yes, through you, Chair. Yeah, there are different tranches because in the first lockdown, that was it. And of course, at that time, we considered that would be the only lockdown. Okay. And then there was the December lockdown, and now there's the continuing January, February. So this one is to cover the period towards February.
Okay, well, I remember sending the particular what was it? It was a press release, I think, that came out, and I sent it off. So perhaps we could just double check back on those. It's only in the last 10 working days or something that I sent it out, just to see whether we have, whether it does relate to us, and if it doesn't, to make sure it goes up on the website.
Yes, we sorry, through you, Chair. Yeah, we do put the appropriate ones on the website, as you're probably aware. And if they are local business related, then we CC them to the Steyning Business Chamber and the Steyning District Partnership also, okay, just to make sure. They generally come back and say they've already received them, but it doesn't.
Sure, they have. Yeah. All right, John.
But yes, this is one that we are applying for.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, let's go to item 11. So under the Public Bodies Admissions to Meetings Act 1960, and in accordance with Standing Order 3D, we exclude the press and public on the grounds that the confidential matters to be discussed under item 12 may involve disclosure of personal or privileged information, which would be inappropriate to put in the public domain. So could I ask all members of the public, please, to leave the meeting?
Well, sorry, Chair.
Chair. Oh, sorry, I have to propose it.
Yeah, well, could we perhaps have a little bit of discussion on it first, please? Because I'm not really clear why we think it's in the public interest that we should discuss in private the grant arrangements with Steyning in Bloom. I mean, if we're not proposing to do anything improper, then we should be very happy to discuss this in public, shouldn't we?
Well, because we're discussing their accounts, because we've asked for them. Isn't that right, John?
No, we haven't asked for accounts as such. No, all the information you need is within the supporting paper in terms of what has been discussed before and what we look to discuss now. And so that on the basis of that, you need to decide whether you want to go into confidential or not.
Right. Well,
so Chair, I'd suggest that this is purely to do with the VAT arrangements. And actually, I think what's being suggested is improper. I still think it's improper. And I think it's odd to go into confidential session to discuss an improper proposal.
Well, I personally think it's the opposite. I think if it is an improper proposal, therefore it's an unlawful proposal, then we should discuss it in confidential session.
Why? We should say quite openly we're not going to do it.
Well, absolutely, but let's do it in confidential and discuss it, and that is the decision that we may well come up with. Steve.
Yeah, sorry, Chair. I think given the discussion we've just had in a public domain about something being potentially improper or unlawful, I think it would be wrong to have this in confidence now, to be honest. I think this needs to be done in the open.
Okay, if that's the general feeling. Okay, so I've made a proposal, so which I'm quite happy to withdraw if that's the general consensus. So the proposal is therefore not a revised proposal, but another proposal, which is to discuss item 12 in public session. So is there a seconder for that, please?
Chair.
Steve.
Chair, sorry, Chair.
Yes.
Presumably we don't need to have, if we don't resolve to go into confidential session, we just carry on.
Well, I made a proposal and I've sort of withdrawn it. So, well, I suppose you're right, John. Yes, I suppose that's true. Yes, John.
Right.
Hello. Yep. Okay. Thank you for that, Steve. Yeah, you're probably right. Okay, right. Item 12 then. Discuss and agree the arrangement with Steyning Bloom. John, do you want to outline what has been proposed?
Okay, so put together a briefing note. Now this was made up of because we had a discussion about Steyning Bloom and the contributions that we were getting in comparison to so the comparison was what we were getting in terms of contribution from Steyning Bloom and what we were paying in terms of the invoices to the local nurseries. And there was a thought that we needed to be just certain that everything was above board, and therefore I sent all the details to our internal auditor in terms of the last 3 years, income expenditure relating to this issue, precise amounts, and also highlighted a little bit of historical perspective. Then I got a response that I've also included within the briefing note from our internal auditor, who has given us an idea that in his opinion, well, he gave his opinion, let's put it that way. And then following that, obviously what we wanted to do was to be certain that we were all happy that what we were doing was indeed correct. So I put together a briefing note saying that these were the communications. Also, I made a suggestion, just really to start the ball rolling and to see what you as a committee thought in terms of where you want to take it. You may want to amend that or throw it out. Either way, I just thought I could put forward something that could start the conversation. Okay.
Thank you, John. Okay, who wants to lead off then? Paul.
Thank you, Chair. Well, yes, I'm very, very troubled by this. The background is, of course, that for perfectly good motives, an attempt, or more than an attempt, in recent years, there's been what I feared was a bit of a fiddle on the customs and excise by the aim was that instead of just giving a grant of £1,000, we would purchase items and then be reimbursed the same amount but less VAT. by Steyning Blooms, so that in effect our £1,000 grew to something like £1,250 or thereabouts. And I want to say at the outset that I think that if we're no longer going to pursue this route, that we should increase our grant. I think the Steyning Bloom operate a very, very good thing, and we don't want to see them suffer as a result of it. But there is a fundamental principle that we're a public body and we shouldn't be engaged in something which is not legitimate. And you just have to look at what the auditor said. I mean, to be honest, I find it quite extraordinary. What it says is, so long as the donation from Steyning Bloom is not linked or contingent on you spending on flowers, then that is fine. Here you go. I.e., if you presented the list as below to a VAT inspector, there would probably be enough to say this is not correct, because there is a clear attributable link between the transactions. And then he goes on to say, but we could fiddle it anyway by pretending that they're not linked. And I've taken the trouble to go back to the November 27 meeting when this was agreed. And it's absolutely clear from the recording that there is a link between the two. You can hear Councillor Bowell at that time say one should cancel out the other, and we make a net donation of £1,000. One cancels out the other, and it is neat and tidy. So there is the clearest link between the two. And I think it would be really, really improper to pretend that there isn't a link between the two. And because I think it's improper, I don't think we should be involved in this at all. But we should make sure that Steyning Bloom doesn't suffer by increasing our grant to them. Thank you, Chair.
Anybody else got any comments?
Well,
John?
Well, just to complete what the internal auditor said, he said, but back in the real world, given the receipt amount is different to the expenditure amount, and hopefully the timings are separated too, then this will be fine. And that is in fact the case. There's two expenditure amounts. The receipt amount is different and not just the £1,000. There is a distinct discrepancy, as you know, I've detailed within the supporting paper. So it's not a cut and dried £1,000 as has been suggested. But I'm not necessarily also saying that, you know, then absolutely fine. This is a steer from our internal auditor, and then I've given a suggestion. Okay. So either we can discuss that or something similar, or whichever.
Well, for clarity's sake, John, when was this originally set up?
This was, I think it could have been the end of 2017.
Okay. Paul, you're going to give us the date?
I was just going to give you the date. It's the 14th of November 27 meeting of F&GP.
Fine. So it was agreed in 17 and subsequently agreed throughout the years. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So each year, whether it's in the budget or whatever, F&GP has agreed this sum.
Sorry, through you, Chair. So we have a budget amount for Steyning Bloom, and that's what we pay out.
No, I understand that, John. What I want to do is to understand the process. So, as I understand it, since November 17, so it takes us November 18, 19, successive F&GP committees were aware of this arrangement.
Yes, it's part of the budget discussion that we have every year, and this comes up every year. So we do. This
is the reason why we brought it up, is the fact that we think it should be changed, and hence John speaking to the auditor and asking him to confirm whether what we were doing was right and proper. So I personally don't think it is right, and that's the reason why I wanted it to come onto this committee. so that we can make a decision as to how we do it. And personally, I think the simple process is that we just up our contribution to Steyning in Bloom to the amount that they need, and therefore they don't lose anything by it. But of course, we'll have to pay the VAT. Anybody else? Steve, do you want to say anything?
I agree with you, Tim. I think just to up the amount. The only other thing I would add would be that if we are now of the opinion that this is not correct practice, do we now need to make a disclosure to HMRC?
That's something we'll now have to take back to the auditor, and suggest we may well be liable for something. I certainly hope.
But in the way, and as to the way forward, I agree with you. I think we just up the amount.
I think the point is that we have identified it, and we should do something about it. And I'm not personally. I think what the internal auditor says is probably correct, but I don't think we want to run that particular model for the next for the next few years. So we've highlighted it. We're doing something about it, and what I would suggest is that we my proposal would be that we up our contribution to Steyning in Bloom to the required amount of the previous plus the VAT, and that we confirm all this with our auditor, and also ask the auditor as to where we take it from here vis-a-vis the tax office. Simon.
My only question on that, when you say up our VAT or up our amount that we're donating to Steyning in Bloom, if we look at 2020 to 21, the gross they paid out was 5,009, and yet they paid to us 3,009, leaving a variance of just over 2,000 quid. Are we going to suggest that we double our contribution to Steyning in Bloom because of this? Because then that's covering the VAT they're losing. Or are you suggesting that we only increase our 1,000 to 1,200, which is only the 20% on our contribution?
Well, that's for the discussion here, isn't it? As to how much we're prepared to give them.
I think there's a risk if we give them,
Rodney.
if we double.
Rodney?
Yeah. Well, as I understand it, we pay for the flowers and the plants, and also the watering. We already do that, and that's in our budget. Where the difference is that they give us a donation, so what it'd be is that we don't have to up our kind of money to them. It would be that we wouldn't be getting the donation from them. That's how I'm seeing it, John. Is that right? If we get that donation, that is what has caused the problem. We technically won't be paying out more money. We won't be getting that income in as a donation. Am I right there?
We, through you, Chair. Yes, Rodney. I wouldn't say we'd ever turn away a donation, and certainly. We almost expect it, because we know that historically they have done a lot of work towards raising funds.
Yeah.
And rather than directly purchasing, obviously then that rearrangement was made, which is why I made a suggestion within the supporting papers that maybe we could write a letter in the way that I've stated, suggesting we do it a different way. I do agree, definitely. But that we say that we don't expect necessarily a donation, but we would welcome it if that was coming our way. The thing being that we have already agreed next year's budget, and although we did choose to increase the amount to Steyning in Bloom by a couple of £100, if they are asking for similar funds to give a similar display next year, then we would be, I'm sure, going over our budget just on this one line. I would just point that out. It's not necessarily something that we can't do. There are other budget lines like the town improvement, which is £1,000, and maybe we can push that towards it. You know, there are other ways that we can agree as we get closer to the time. But just
well, as we said, we're coming up to the end of the financial year, and there are we hope we'll have a surplus. So it might be that there's something that we can do with that. Paul.
Well, it was just to say, Chair, that I don't think we should be involved in any way at all with donations coming back to us.
No, I'm not intending that.
No, but John suggested that. What I'd like to suggest is that I think would be perfectly legitimate is if we said we will do, I don't know what the watering costs in, by the way, but I mean, if the watering costs something like 1,500 quid a year inclusive of VAT, we could say, well, we just invoice us for the watering. We will do the watering, and then it costs us a net amount of 1,200 or thereabouts. Or indeed, we could simply buy whatever value of flowers we think appropriate. We could be willing to pay 1,500 quid's worth of flowers bought by us and given to the Steyning Society, to the Steyning in Bloom, so that again we get the VAT back on what we buy. As long as we're buying it and dealing with it, we're buying the service. But what's wrong is to buy more and then have a little backhander under the table to be reimbursed it net of the VAT. So I'd like to suggest we explore the watering angle with them, maybe. I've no idea what it costs.
Well, I think we should explore the whole cost side of it, John, to be honest, so that we can come up with a figure that is meaningful, or a proposition. At the moment, we're slightly in the dark. I know you put some stuff down, but I think we need to have a more in-depth understanding so that we can make a proper judgment as to the way we go. I think what Paul has suggested is a possibility. I think the buying of the flowers is a possibility, or it's just a straight, it's okay, Rodney, I'll come here. Or it could just be that we increase our grant. So, but I think to make that decision, we need much more detailed information. Sorry, Rodney.
Well, what I was going to say is, I mean, if we do, in the past, we've had this donation, we've got to bear in mind that most of the Steyning in Bloom won't have those funds, because they usually, build up their funds by having, social evenings and this sort of thing, which of course for the last year they haven't been able to do. So, like a lot of these organisations, they most of it could be cash strapped, as it were.
I think they could be. No, I think you're right.
So, and what we don't want to do is kind of the Steyning in Bloom not do what they're doing.
Well,
maybe we should have that discussion with them. Steve.
Oh, yes, yeah.
So just so I'm clear, if we take the 20 to 21 year, we've received a donation of 3,900. We've added roughly 2,000 to that in buying the flowers, of which 1,000 has come back in VAT, reclaimed VAT. Is that correct?
I think that's correct, John, isn't it?
So it seems to me that the option is then that we, in the next year, that we will not take the donation from Steyning and Bloom. That's their money to spend. And then we will give a grant somewhere, but presumably between 1,000 and 2,000.
Correct.
To top them up to where they are. So I agree. I don't think we should leave them.
Or possibly to buy flowers up to that amount, or flowers plus the watering. There could be
buying the flowers and
different combinations of offer.
Yep.
John.
Yes, it has to be said that the previous arrangement was that we just simply gave them £1,000 grant each year towards what they were doing. So that would make it a whole lot simpler to go back with what we were doing before. You're right there, Steve. But we might want to increase that amount. That way, we don't get involved with purchasing and anything else, because actually it does cause a little bit more difficulty. So that would be a simpler way of doing it, and would rule out any income and expenditure.
Let me come up with a proposal here, because I think we could talk around this without knowledge of all the facts. We've got, I would guess, because we're coming up to spring, that they will want to have a decision fairly quickly from us. So what I would suggest we do is we set up fairly rapidly a working party to look in detail at the various proposals that we can offer them. Now, it may be necessary that we have to have, it depends what their timescales are. If they can wait till our next meeting, so the working party can bring it back to the next F&GP and make the decision there. But if they really need the decision before then we might have to consider a quick EOM to discuss it. But I'd like to have the opportunity to sit down and go through all the figures, fully understand it, and then come up with a firm proposal that everybody agrees to. John.
Yes, rather than necessarily within the bounds of your motion, so just to say that if necessary, we can bring it towards a meeting. It might be full council that happens sooner rather than anything else, and therefore we could deal with it at the next appropriate meeting.
Okay.
I was just going to ask the question because I had set out, and this was to be open and transparent to the internal auditor and to all of you, exactly what we had spent gross and net and the donations over the last 3 years since we've been doing this. So I'm just wondering what other information is it that we are going to be looking for to be considered at the working party?
Well, it's more to do with having this really laid out for us so that we do understand how much we've got to, rather than sit here trying to work it out now. But if that's what people want to do, well, then we can do that. But my understanding is we paid out 5,956. Is that right? Net, I presume, is after the VAT, 496385.
Yeah.
We received a donation of £3,900.
Correct.
Okay, so I don't have a proper calculator here, but if you bear with me for 2 seconds.
The difference being 1,063.85.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
I'd have thought you could have done that in your head, Tim.
I used to be able to, Rodney, you'd be surprised, but not now.
No.
Lucky if I can remember what I have for breakfast. Right. 5,956.61. Okay. Minus 3,100 is 256. 256.61. Okay. So, really, what they paid us 3,900, and the gross that we paid out is 5,956. So the difference being £2,056.61p. So to maintain the status quo, I believe that that's probably the figure that we've got to look at, which is 2,056.61. So does somebody want to correct me on that? Steve, you're quite good with these figures.
I wasn't following your
oh, okay.
Well, Chair,
I'm going to have to admit.
This is why I said let's do it at a working party where we can sit down.
I must admit, Tim, I must admit, I was sitting here thinking, why don't we just make a donation of 1,500, not accept the donation from them, and be done with it.
Okay. Cool.
So I was thinking that and not listening to your maths. Okay. So I apologise.
I wouldn't worry, and you're not the first who hasn't listened to me.
Well, I mean, of course, what we have been doing with this VAT arrangement was in effect doubling the value of the donation, because we gave them 1,000 and we gave them £1,000 worth of VAT in effect. Now, if we just turn it into a straight grant, then we're not able to make any help to them VAT wise. Whereas if we actually buy something, e.g. the watering, then if it was £1,000 worth of watering, then in effect our grant becomes 1,200. So there is an advantage to providing either a service or objects, flowers, if we can we can legitimately do that.
Yeah.
And so perhaps we need to know from them what the watering costs, so that if it is the right sort of thing, we could simply say, we'll enter into a direct arrangement with the company that waters the flowers.
Yes, I'd be happiest if we could find out for sure that we would be, as a public body, allowed to do that, which is to buy flowers and then give them as a donation to
well, we're working.
Steyning and Bloom. I assume there's no issue with it, but I would like to have that clarified. Joanna.
It's just to say, I mean, I have a lot of sympathy with all points here, but I agree with Steve in that I think it would be much simpler if we just gave them a grant. Gave them a donation, a grant, call it whatever you like. I think the problem is if you're buying something for Steyning and Bloom and we can claim back the VAT, then presumably we should offer exactly the same service to everything else in Steyning. So we'd have to offer that to the Bowls Club and the Cricket Club and everybody. We'd have to offer it to Steyning Festival, etc., etc., etc. Otherwise, it's demonstrably unfair. It just seems to me it would be so much more sensible and cleaner and clearer if we just said, right, okay, here's £1,500 or 2,000 or whatever it is.
Simon.
I was going to say, Joanne has pretty much taken the words out of my mouth. I think it's the cleanest and easiest way is to say, there's a grant, get on with it. If we start buying flowers for Steyning and Bloom, like Joanna said, other people that we're also giving grants to are going to come to us and say, can you buy this? Can you buy that? And it's just going to make more and more and more of a mess. Just keep it simple, 1,500 quid. I'm in favour of what Steve said. Steve's like Joanna is, there's at least 3 of us now. Just keep it easy, keep it clean. Otherwise, it's going to be very messy in the future.
Paul?
Well, just to say, I mean, I do take the point entirely, but there is a fairly clear distinction between this and the others, which is that the things are put in our high street. They're going in the public domain. It's not like the Bowls Club, which is a private club. This is a service for the public in our high street that we can legitimately work in tandem with them. And I would suggest that the only parallel would be the Christmas lights, where in a similar way, we could perfectly legitimately say, we will pay to put the lights up every year, because that's part of what we do as part of our public service. And again, we would save the VAT on that by doing it that way. I think that's perfectly legitimate.
Well, a lot of parish councils actually do pay for their own flower arrangements. Rodney, you were next.
I was just going to say, it's such a kind of loose-ended subject. I think we should have a working party on it, and then we can all have all the details in front of us so that we can really work out the best way. At the moment, we're talking about something about doing a bit here and a bit there. I think it warrants a working party.
And also to discuss with Steyning and Bloom themselves.
Yeah,
Deborah.
Exactly.
Yes, well, I was just going to bring up the comparison with the lights, because a decision was made that we couldn't do anything towards putting them up, paying towards things, and so that's why we just gave them a straight grant of £1,500.
Steve,
can I just try and make a proposal just to bring this to a close? Can I just propose that we resolve that we won't accept the donation from Steyning and Bloom next year, and that we will offer at their choice a cash grant of £1,500 or flowers the same amount.
So I'll second that.
I'm not sure I wouldn't prefer a larger sum, actually. Can we just have a...
Well, that's what I was going to say.
I'm happy if somebody wants to up it.
I'd just like to put an amendment that is up to £2,000, which is the difference, as I say, from the calculations that we've just done. So I'd be happier to put it up to 2,000 on this one occasion because we've come to this rather late and we're coming up to the planting season and we want to support them. So I would suggest that we up that to £2,000. That would be my amendment.
I would support I would second your amendment.
Okay, shall we vote on the amendment then? All those in favour of granting a £2,000 grant to Steyning in Bloom as a one-off payment for this year, obviously for discussion the following year, but in view of the nearness to spring and the planting time. All those in favour?
Sorry, Jim.
Oh, sorry, can I
Sorry,
have a
Tim.
second?
Also, of course, that we're not going to, that we won't be accepting the grant from Steyning.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, and with the provision that we don't receive any grants from them as we did in previous years.
Yeah.
So, seconder for that? I got one. Paul. Thank you. All those in favour?
Unanimous. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.
Okay, well, look, date of next meeting to be confirmed, because at the next council meeting we're going to be discussing the dates of meetings, etc. So we will confirm that at the first opportunity. Other than that, thank you all very, very much, and